Welcome back, everyone, from our summer break. Um, it's really great to see you all. I hope you had you did something fun and relaxing. Um, I definitely did something that was not relaxing but fun. We went to see we went to see the Olympic Games in France, not in Paris, but in Saint Etienne and in Lyon, and um, not being really a sports person, um, that was a bit out of my comfort zone, but still very interesting, just in the spirit of the Olympic Games. Um, being there is everything that counts. So we've been there, crossed that off the bucket list. Um, apart from that, we obviously had a bunch of things, um, ongoing development happening, as part of the AM world. The thing that I've been most involved in these days is, obviously our real use monitoring, and we've built a new oversight tool, which, I think we are scheduled to talk about in one of the upcoming sessions. And if you are a regular, you know our drill, which is, Dominik knows all the exact dates, and I'm in the department of hand waving. So, yeah, so that's new on my side. Um, anything interesting sharing worthy from your end, whether it's vacation related or AEM related? I'm happy to hear about both.
I will do an update at the end with all the links, of
Yeah,
course, and the next event. So that is something for the end.
yeah.
Um,
So Ina, any launches over the summer?
Yeah, one smaller launch, but I'm curious. I've got one question for the round, so maybe
Right.
someone has some curious stories about that. So, what is the most interest or most complex thing you automated with edge delivery services, with Power Automate or whatever?
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Yeah,
Let me.
it was a question. So
Yeah.
I'm still struggling with Power Automate because for me it seems a bit
S
bitchy.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah. So
not really reliable, but I'm just curious what you are doing with Power Automate to automate your edge delivery services.
so Ina, I can tell you that the main thing that I did with Power Automate was to switch to Zapier as soon as I could get approval from Adobe. Um, right, and one of the key limitations that I found that I found and that I found super annoying is, that Power Automate doesn't have a trigger for, new cells or new rows being added to a spreadsheet, right? Which is, something that happens quite often, and that you want to listen to quite often. And all the workarounds I've tried, like, yeah, I know that the sheet has been updated. Now let me try to get the most recently added cell, prove to be not very reliable. So I was, and I already knew that Zapier could do the thing that I needed to do. So I just needed to work through the corporate approval process of us buying a tool that can do the job instead of using the tool that we got as part of our Office subscription for free. So, um, sorry, I can't share any Power Automate, any fantastic Power Automate success stories with you. So,
I'm also still looking for
yeah,
a good one.
yeah.
So trying to read data from Word files is also not a good thing, which you can do in Power Automate.
Okay. So, what are you trying to achieve?
To automate, so to add a button in Sidekick to run some flows in Power Automate to change some Excel files at the end.
Okay.
So
Yeah. And triggering a flow should work comparably easily, right? So I'm given what I said before, I'm not trying to make it look too easy, but I think you have some HTTP trigger that allows you to start the process.
Yeah, triggering was not the complicated part. The complicated part was more the reliability of Power Automate, because if the connection just doesn't like the connection anymore, it's just failing fully, because you can only configure it through the UI, even if you see the configuration, but you cannot modify it. So if Power Automate thinks the connection is just not working, it just throws an error message.
Yeah,
So
and
We heard also that they've had.
I've been experiencing similar connectivity issues, but I've been blaming it on our corporate IT policy. Right? Basically, we have a policy that requires us to sign into Slack, I think every 2 weeks, anew, and that requires me to change my password every 90 days. Although most, right? So fortunately, we did away with that policy for most Adobe employees a long time ago. But I'm able to touch some sensitive systems, so they said, you have to still live through the 90-day cycle, and whenever I updated my password, all my Power Automate flows were broken. So one of the Power Automated flows that I had was one that was checking my Outlook calendar for shifts that were added by PagerDuty, and basically shifts added by PagerDuty to somebody else's account. And that somebody else was a user that we called PTO, like paid time off. And the basic idea was, if somebody in our team needed somebody else to cover a shift for them, we would create an override in PagerDuty, assign the shift to the user called PTO, which was PTO has a different name, that we basically took over the account of somebody who didn't use PagerDuty because we couldn't get a service account. And whenever a time slot appeared in that person's calendar in my Outlook, I would send a Slack message and saying, hey, please, somebody cover the following shift because somebody wants to go on PTO. And that worked mostly great, apart from this 90-day period of disconnecting. And if I remember to change my password and didn't get locked out, then I also had to remember to refresh the connection in Power Automate.
So you needed an automation who is changing the Power Automate flow.
Yeah. So in the end, this all went away because we switched our entire. So Adobe changed the entire on-call infrastructure from PagerDuty, which is a very, very solid product that I cannot say anything bad about, to something that is homegrown. And yeah, and if you cannot say anything nice about a piece of software, don't say anything. So that's what I'm doing here. Yeah, and a part of this, we don't get calendars anymore. So I don't really know when I'm on call anymore, or if somebody else needs to cover a shift, which is mostly fine because Edge Delivery Services has been behaving Edge Delivery Services and all the underlying services have been behaving exceptionally well over the past couple of months. So knock on wood that this remains. The last time I got called was actually this Tuesday. No, yesterday. It was yesterday. Mainly because of essentially a false positive. So we have one monitor that is monitoring a couple of that is monitoring the top N customer sites, and one of these top N customer sites went into maintenance mode in their CDN, and I found out about it first. So we could resolve that quite quickly. So and that's exactly how we want things to be, right? If your site goes down, it should be because you are making a decision, not because we are making a decision, or because any of our and any of the providers in our stack are making the decision. So sorry for the detour into being on call at Adobe. Yeah.
Okay. Let's ask for questions. So, are there any questions? I listed a few topics. Is it like Universal Editor, Helix 5? Is it ROM? Is it Crosswalk? Whatever.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? So, I've actually worked with some of your colleagues, like Martin Bugari or whatever, and
Boogie.
I used to work for Reply in the
Yep.
ComRap team over there, but now I work for EY. So EY is the best, by the way. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's myself. So one of the things they're really trying to do, and I'm trying to wrap my head around, is really get around Crosswalk, EDS, and why it's a relatively viable solution for some instances. I'm sure everybody's heard this question. So, specifically Crosswalk. We're selling into a client Crosswalk because they want some things like workflows and some other things that come out of box with just AEM traditional. I don't know what we're calling it these days. So do you see the build process or the actual life cycle of a project the same in, say, a traditional AEM? Because when you get good at traditional AEM, I could turn around an AEM implementation relatively fast with core components and variations of core components. But whereas the block collection is not as robust as the core, right? So what are you guys seeing as far as like turnaround time from the beginning of a project of, say, Crosswalk all the way to implementation or turning the website on per se?
Yeah. Okay. So my general guidance for a standalone edge delivery services project, right? Just using document-based authoring. And this is rooted in more than 100 VIP projects that we've done, is about 3 weeks, right? So we have for plain edge delivery services or edge delivery services in Adobe Experience Manager sites with document-based authoring, as some people want me to call it. We have a 3-week turnaround time in the VIP projects, and I know that the VIP projects are not run exactly the way EY would run a project or Reply would run a project, right? Because there's a different contractual structure involved, but this is a really good indicator of what it takes to do content migration, implement the site, given that specification is ready, and get going, right? So with Crosswalk, we have to add a couple of things on top of that, right? With Crosswalk, we have to add on top of that, essentially building the authoring interface, right? Or building the authoring interface and putting together the right components and the right sorry, I hope that's my daughter. She's on the train back home, and I hope I can call her later. Seems to be a Deutsche Bahn issue. So speaking of trains, I just lost my train of thought. Basically for Crosswalk, you also have to define the components that allow you to do the editing, right? To do the authoring, right? And that takes a bit of additional time. And then on top of that, you have to consider all the things where you said, this is why the client chose, or this is why we recommended the client to use the AEM authoring system in the first place, right? To set up the workflows and so on. But in terms of development of the core front end, there should be no difference, right? And and that's basically how I would look at it, right? And one way how you can deal with this is to basically say you split this by saying you do the normal development, and the normal development can work on Markdown files, can work on Word documents, right? And then you switch over to Crosswalk when it's ready, in case you want to split it up into multiple tracks.
I think the overhead, if you're looking purely about the mapping files and things, is really not a lot. So maybe it's like 1 extra day or something like that in total. So this is really, but it depends what else you want to do. So if you want to create workflows and all those stuff, yes, for sure, this definitely has a lot of overhead then. But if you do exactly the same in Crosswalk and in document-based editing, the difference is not really a lot. But then the question is, do you need it, or do you want to use the overhead, or yeah. But it's not like it takes 1 month more or something like that, just for the basic things.
Yeah.
I was surprised how easy it was. But if you don't need it, you don't need to use Crosswalk.
And one of the things that that came up regarding Crosswalk and that we iterated on in the Crosswalk design was this question of how much customizability do we want there to be, right? How much essentially author side code do we want you to write? And we basically the first iteration that we started with was to say you write as much author side code as you would write normally, and then you write some adapter code on top of that, right? And that obviously meant a lot more code. So that in the second iteration, we actually came up with this approach of no, you don't do any author side code, you do mapping definitions, and you use the universal editor, right? And I think that is in terms of development speed, and in terms of the threshold that you need to cross, a much more sensible trade-off. But on the other hand, if you are used to having all of the power of AEM in your arsenal, right, then this is this is again a simplification, right? And I'm not saying that simplifications are bad. In fact, they're a good thing, right? But they're never entirely painless, right? Because sometimes you need to tell your customer the thing that you're looking for, you probably don't need, you might not need, and it's a good way to find out if you really need it by just launching without it and then iterating on top of that. So.
Hey, I have a question down the avenue of Universal Editor, like when we work in the Crosswalk system, when we have Universal Editor integration into it instead of document-based authoring. So is it yet ready for the local development?
Yeah, to some degree. So one thing. So the Crosswalk and the AEM command line take different approaches to local development, right? So basically for anything that is visitor facing, you do local development local development doesn't mean offline development, right? Because you have the aem up command line, and the aem up command line will basically take your code files from your local directory, and it will take your content from aem.live or hlx.live, right? So
right.
And Crosswalk in particular will take these mapping configurations out of your GitHub, right? So it won't take them from your local disk, which means you need to commit and you need to push first before you can see the changes.
Right.
And I realized that this is not as comfortable as we do it with AEM up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we are loud enough about this, then then Dirk and Markus might take a hint and implement something, right? Even if it means changing the way you would do this in AEM normally, right?
Right. Yeah, because like we tried to set it up locally, but we faced quite a lot of issues
Right.
while working it out. We
Yeah.
had some instantiate related issues. The startup wasn't very inconsistent.
Yeah, and
then
and I'm just
sometimes like there are glitches in the CRUD operations. You would delete and you would just see, or it would just copy another element twice and just as a placeholder, but it goes away on the page refresh. But still, like there are we realize like there are lots of things we need to straighten out before we go into full-fledged customer-facing development for Universal Editor.
Yeah.
Is there, like, if you know of any plans to when it's gonna get fixed, or are there any things in the works?
So the most important things that you can do is when you encounter these issues is to report them to create visibility, right? So if you have a Slack channel with us, use that channel, and you can add me, and I will make sure that it reaches the right people. If you don't have one, you can still reach out to me on Discord, and I can make sure that we set one up. Right? Ideally, you share what company you work for and your work email, and I can set that up.
Right.
And we do. I can tell you we do. The Slack channel.
Okay.
Proficient. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Well, Raf, I know that you have a channel. I didn't know that you both belong. So
I'm from the same company.
Okay, excellent. Yeah.
I should have started with that.
Yeah, great. No, and so the Slack channel is generally the best way of doing this, right? Because you can easily share information that you probably don't want to have public on Discord, and it still gives me the ability to pull in the right engineer to look into this and to reproduce it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make sure to use it because I recorded my screen and I have those issues ready to post. So I can go right away there and do it. Thank you.
Yeah. No one, right? We from my perspective, right? And I'm taking the perspective of an engineer who says it's fantastic to have direct access to our customers who are dealing with the issues, right? But whenever I'm dealing with my vendors, I absolutely know that we have a couple of vendors where there's essentially a Slack-based process, right? Where you can say, come on, let's just jump in a huddle and work this out. And I have others where it's very ticket-based, and I know this might be a tiny thing, but it's still going to cost both of us a week. So so please use that.
Hey, and one more question around the same line. So, do you know if we can use CSS preprocessors with it, like SAS or LESS or any other preprocessors?
For yes, so for edge delivery services, you can absolutely do that. It's not something that we necessarily recommend, right? So, and in our VIP process, we have seen a couple of companies who said, well, less is a requirement for all of our front-end work, and you have to use it. So it was used in the VIP process, and one of the reasons why we don't recommend it, right, is that on the one hand, CSS itself has evolved very much since LESS and SAS were introduced, right? So that a lot of the functionalities like modules, like deeper nesting, like more complicated, like more advanced selectors are not really necessary anymore, right? And on top of that, vendor prefixing, you probably don't need it either anymore, right? For the majority of work. The other caveat is that we don't have any built-in support, right? So that and built-in support means that we don't run less for you on the server side. We don't run SaaS for you on the server side. We don't have a built-in CI process, but what you have is you have GitHub, right? And if you have GitHub, you have GitHub Actions, and in GitHub Actions, you can run it, install node modules, which gives you access to LAS and SaaS, and then you basically need to make sure that after you've run the build, you commit it back into the repository so that it can be deployed. And that's the way I would look at it, so that even if the developer locally forgets about it, you commit it, and you can still have your local watchers to make sure that the local development process is relatively smooth, but I wouldn't rely on the developer remembering that they need to commit this generated CSS files in addition to the LAS and SAS files. So
and like about committing, we always have to commit to, like, so far what we have experienced, we always have to make the commit to main branch, and that's what we are able to see. But with document-based authoring, we had this privilege to just change the branch name, and you can work on different branches in there, right?
Yeah.
But with this universal editor integration, we always had to push all the component-related stuff, all the filters and module definitions and everything to the main branch, and that's how we can test.
Yes.
So that has like proven to be a little difficult. Like if we have to go into a full-fledged project, then and multiple developers are working on it, it became quite challenging.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So okay, so in Edge Delivery Services itself, you have a couple of things that are living in GitHub, but that are only being picked up from the main branch anyway, right? So the most probably notorious example is your FSTab YAML, right? So you cannot have one FSTab per branch, and the reason for this is that this is essentially a site level configuration that has just made it into the repository by accident, right? Because we didn't have a better place to stick configurations, so we stuck a bunch of configuration into the code repository, and that is one of the things that we are fixing with Helix 5, where we have a dedicated place for configuration. And yes, these configurations are relatively global and not branch specific. Right? For Crosswalk, right, one of the architectural limitations that we have to deal with here is that we are essentially still dealing with single AEM environments, right? So you can basically have as many configurations per project as you have environments, which in most cases means exactly one, right? And that's a bit less convenient than the flexibility that you have in a world that is entirely serverless, right? Where resources are free and where we tell you just create a new branch. So I realize that this is a limitation. Yeah.
But you can still test the different branches with the ref parameter, I think. So not for all files, so the index files, and I think also the mapping for the universal editor is something which is taken from the main branch, if I remember correctly. But the if you're developing new blocks inside Edge Delivery Services, you can just change, I think it's the ref parameter or something like that in the URL, and then you can change the branch still. It's just a different area where you need to put it, so not in the domain name, but it's as a parameter.
Yeah, so for example, if I have to test my HTML and CSS or JavaScript related changes, I always do have an option. Like once it is authored on the main branch, and then I can even do the local development and test it on 3000 and just get it running and see the changes. But my question was along the lines, like if I am a developer and I have been assigned a ticket to develop a certain component or a certain block, then I always have to first go through main branch for module all the definitions of a component and filters and whatnot, and then I can segue into my feature branch. So I wanted to like if there is an option, we can do everything on a feature branch and then merge it in, just like in a traditional AEM setup.
Yeah, the universal editor is a bit tricky there, I think.
Appears to be. Now I have like bunch of questions. I am just remembering another.
Yeah.
So for the asset browser, when we were trying again for the local development, and we tried to load the asset browser, it was just not loading up anything and just keep showing that you don't have authorization or access to it.
Okay.
But I assume like for local development, shouldn't it load my local DAM instead of fetching it from the server? I know.
I don't know, and the best way is probably again to put it to Slack so that we can look at the at the concrete authentication issue.
Okay.
So, right, and the key thing here is that most of this is essentially working in the cloud, right? So and whenever we have to go from the cloud back into your local machine, this is incredibly difficult, and it's incredibly difficult to do right. And if you do it, if you don't do it right, then it's incredibly dangerous. So so that's why we tend to err on the side of it's so difficult that you sometimes cannot do it, rather than the other way. I think, yeah.
Okay.
I think this summer as an IT industry, we had a good couple of days of the cloud reaching out into our local devices in a way that we didn't anticipate, and so so I definitely don't want to be part of that kind of news cycle. So yeah.
Understood. We do always have to like set up the Franklin page component in order to provide a local connection for Universal Editor, right? We need to override the Franklin page component. Is there a plan to get it out of the box for the Franklin page?
I don't know. Yeah.
I think that is almost end of my question.
Okay, good. Yeah, well.
Rest I'll reach out to you on Slack.
Yeah. No, and the thing is, right, we have these Discord calls every other week. So that's one of the changes, and I can already see Tom and Ina saying, "What happened to the Tuesday? What happened to the Tuesday slot?" No, good. So we probably won't have a Tuesday slot anymore, because right, we see most of the interest coming from Europe and North America, and that means every other week we're here. Otherwise, there's Slack, there's Discord, right? So so that you should never feel out of the loop or left alone with these issues.
But I've got I'm curious about one topic, Jago.
Yeah.
So sorry, I didn't got your name before. So are you doing a lot if in the Crosswalk project directly inside AEM? Or is it really mostly in Edge delivery services? Because in theory, most of the stuff should be done directly on the Edge delivery services part, or? So I'm curious what kind of stuff you are doing, and if it's a lot, what you are doing inside AEM. So the classic AEM, however it's called. You know what I mean.
So what we are doing is primarily like Universal Editor. We are not doing it in classic AEM. It's just a normal Universal Editor EDS setup. So we would do AEM as a cloud service setup initially. So we tried it on Sandbox and everything, it worked. But then for the local development, we started like a normal EDS setup that you usually have. Nothing special, nothing fancy. Just I think I followed instructions mostly that were available on Adobe's Experience Manager sites for this setup.
Because then most development is really done on, so you don't need to run it locally in AEM for that. So you're running AEM up with the edge delivery parts on port 3000, but not the classic AEM, which you then would need to connect. So at the end, it is the same as if you have one space, so one Google Drive or something like that with all your files, or?
So for document-based authoring, we do have like local 3000 and that Google Drive setup. But for this universal editor setup with ETS, I have AEM as a cloud service setup on my local, and then I was just testing, like it also works with AEM up or Helix up in my case for the front end part of it. But for all the like rest of the testing, for adding the component and adding the definition of block and all that stuff, I in my GitHub project, it's all like AEM as a cloud service setup, and I use that URL in the experience manager online to like see my page in there.
Yeah, because when I was working with the Crosswalk project, but it's already some months ago, I never started in local AEM. So yes, the 3000 one, so the edge delivery front end part, but not a real AEM, because everything was running on the cloud service. I was just curious if you have different requirements that you need to modify a lot inside AEM sites.
Not very much. I don't think we had to modify much in the AEM site setup. We just have to write this Franklin page component, overwrite it, like assign it to, point it to the proper end. And I think that was it mostly. And I needed it to like add the components in there from my local instead of always going through the sandbox route.
Okay, now I think I got what, yeah, okay. Yeah, I just modified everything on the cloud service thing because, yeah, it was the place where all the documents and all the content was located at the end. So thanks for your feedback. I was just curious.
Sure.
Okay.
Do we have any other topics and questions? We have another 15 minutes.
Yeah, I have maybe a comment, but also a question to add on to it. And it's a little bit broader. I'm not going to talk anything too technical. But we're hosting a AEM user group meeting here in Chicago in 2 weeks. It's actually a little less than 2 weeks, on the 28th. And we're going to be talking about edge delivery services. The target is going to be a little bit more marketing group, not so much developers. So we're not going to get quite as technical. But I wanted to walk through document-based authoring, creating performant pages and experiences, ease of authoring, but also ease of development flow, how quickly you can get a site out, all that good stuff, right? Were there any other areas that you would want me to evangelize or get into? Because I'm noticing that there's more and more in terms of edge delivery services. For example, I just noticed this week, edge delivery services for forms. I had no idea that was out there. So, I'm kind of learning more and more, about what we could potentially either dive into. Universal Editor obviously is its own thing. I love that they have the UI extensions. You got this AI bot that you could potentially use to build out forms. I mean, that's amazing. We saw that from a partner discussion yesterday. But again, the question is, anything else you want me to talk about for this discussion? It's about an hour long. It's going to be more marketers, potential clients, couple of other partners. Yeah. So from my perspective, for a first-time audience, I would really stick to the 3 talking points, right? Number 1, with edge delivery services, you can get fast sites. With edge delivery services, you can get fast authoring. With edge delivery services, you can get fast development. These are the things that these are the things that I easily that you can demonstrate easily and that matter, right? So the first point is depending on the audience, might be the one that needs a bit of introduction,
right? Because sometimes you have marketers who are really, let's say, customer centric and who know about the impact of having good performance and a good experience, and in some cases you need to do the level setting there, right? And I would then on top of that use the experience that you have with your clients and showcase that, right? So that's the other part, to show here and basically to make it concrete, right? One of the advantages that we have is that we have our 100 plus VIP projects that we can reference to, but obviously with your projects you can go much you can go much deeper, and that's definitely something that I would show, right, to demonstrate that experience.
Is there a couple of sites that I can use to have as a reference for that? You mentioned the 100 plus VIP sites.
Yeah.
I think there's a list somewhere, right?
We don't have so not all of these VIP customers are referenceable in the sense of that, right? That they want us to mention them. I think we have a couple ones that are part of the reference stories that we used for the go-to-market. And if you, one thing that you could do is you could ping Cedric or Martin on Slack, and they can give you a good list of sites, because they're closer to the go-to-market side of things, and you should be able to just ping them in Slack and they see that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and it's an hour.
Yeah.
We're doing a hybrid meeting too, so some in person and then some virtual. But looking forward to it. I posted it too in Discord, but I think you were all on break. Hopefully it was a good break for you all.
Yeah, you know what? Let's post that again, and I can actually add you. I can give you permission so that you can post to the announcement channel.
Oh, cool.
That gives you a bit more visibility, and I know you're not going to abuse it. So
no.
yeah. No, and right. So the thing about giving marketing-minded people a channel for promotion is always a double-edged sword, right? You want to make sure that they use it for promotion that is useful for the community, and that event sounds like a great thing.
Yeah.
So,
and I try to post pretty mindfully as well.
Yeah.
I don't post a whole lot, but it needs to be purposeful.
No, and I know that we have a couple of people in Chicago who might be interested in that as well, right? So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Dominik, I think that's a reminder to work on this calendar thingy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, thank you for hosting this. This is all these community hosted events are, in my experience, always, if not better than the Adobe hosted events, at least as good, and they bring a different kind of energy that I really like.
Yeah, and I've been trying to evangelize this even internally within our company, because I think it is going to change how development is done and how we think about customers asking for a new site build out, right, or a refresh. I think delivery services should be the first thing we're looking at,
Exactly.
not always the traditional AM build out.
Yeah.
It's a different developer pool.
Yeah.
It takes less time to build out, so that's one of the reasons I'm trying to evangelize it.
Yeah, that's why we built it. Yeah, excellent.
That's super. Ralph, I already pinged Martin. Try to get the information from him about reference customers.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Dominik, please share that list with me as well.
Yes, definitely.
So we have another hackathon next week, and part of this is going to be documentation, and I might be able to sneak in a couple of marketing side updates as well, so that this kind of stuff is easier to find.
Yeah, I think that there is something around. I just have to ping. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do we have any questions? Otherwise, I will do some marketing about the next events.
Yeah, I have questions for you, Dominik. You know it. So,
Okay.
well, so now that we are back from the summer break, what are our next things to happen?
Yes, okay, I open up a few slides. And there will be a great event from where we invited Netcentric. They will have a showcase, I think, on it's so small, on August 22, about the launch of their Solari Astrocraft. It's on Edge Delivery, so I think that will be definitely a good session. And after that, a week later, we will have a session with Gabriel Wald about Universal Editor. So these are the next sessions that are already on the website and coming up, and the next ones will be posted, of course. And I will also put some links here into the chat. But what is also new is that we have on YouTube, where you also find the recordings of every session. There are now also the web currents. So I will put the link here into the channel, and the
web
famous
current
star
sounds
is
interesting.
Lars.
What is that? Can you tell me more about this?
Oh, let me try. I need to have it in front of me. So this is with our famous Lars. It's web currents for developers, and I think it's a monthly special, often I guess with a guest and with a special topic, a deep dive into a special topic in Adobe Experience Manager. I think it's not only Edge Delivery Services, what I understood. It also goes a little bit into whole AEM. Ron Nagy is normally the host or the moderator and is interviewing guests, and it will be in the same YouTube channel. We have our recordings for the sessions. So the next one should go out soon. Ron said something by the end of August, hopefully not only in September, and he will also jump into one of the sessions later on here and explain a little bit more about what he is doing and what the web current's all about. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. So if you're interested in how coherent I can talk if I have a good video editor who's cutting together and cutting out all of my ams and alls, watch the first web currents episode, and if you're interested in stuff that is more interesting than what I can deliver, then watch all the other upcoming episodes. And so I can only share this from a recording perspective. This was a lot of fun, and actually quite a different vibe from what we have here. So please watch it and tell us what you think and what you would like to hear.
Yes, I think that's it from my side. We have 5 minutes if there is an urgent question. So like maybe a launch tomorrow of a new Edge delivery site, and you need to know something now because it's not working. So Lars is here.
Any last minute CDN troubleshooting, I'm here for it. Okay. Well, then I'm going to see all of you in 2 weeks from now. Maybe share a couple of things from our hackathon, and great to see all of you. Glad to be back from break, and we're going to talk in 2 weeks from now. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.